There we go. So, yeah, those are some of the things there, the patience and staying calm, etc. All very important. So this course or is actually not an anger management course. Anger management courses are, quite common, and they're all about learning to manage anger. And there's an assumption there that anger is perfectly normal, perfectly healthy, and something which we've got to put up with, like a medical condition. So you have to manage your heart condition if you've got one, or whatever other ailments you might have. So this is a bit different to managing. This is about eliminating, getting rid of. So saying goodbye, not just for today or tomorrow, but forever. And so it makes this course or talk very different from others from that point of view. And some people might say, how on earth can you get rid of all anger? So out of interest, actually, if you'd like to indicate with a little hand, if you think you can get rid of all anger, because the opposite of anger is being peaceful, isn't it? So hands up those who think you can get rid of all anger. There's a little reaction button down there, I think, where you can put something if you want, just to show. No, we didn't. Oh, we've got 3 people at least. Well, that's great. Good. Okay. So those of you who believe you can get rid of all anger, you are correct. You can. And if you believe you can't, you're correct too. Because if you don't believe you can get rid of it, then you won't get rid of it. Or you'll hang on to traces of it. So the beautiful thing about the Brahma Kumari's approach to spirituality and to the understanding of the soul is that we are originally completely peaceful. That's our original nature, along with being happy and along with being full of power and wisdom and different qualities like that, and love, of course. So if something doesn't belong to us, it means that we've picked it up along the way. We've learnt to become angry, and therefore, logically, we can also unlearn that and we can let go of it. So this is the foundation on which all of this course or this talk is based. So there's a definite logic behind it. And when we remember that, then it helps us a lot. And of course, the foundation for the Brahma Kumaris is summed up in 2 words: Om Shanti. Om, I'm a soul; Shanti, peaceful. So this is the foundation of the course. Everything we're going to be looking at in the next hour is about how can we become that in practice, because obviously quite often we're not like that. Quite often we do get angry. I used to shout and swear and bang around and occasionally throw things in frustration. It's going back quite a long time now. And and then I moved from that to getting irritated, tutting. Why can't they, behave themselves, etc., etc. And then the frustration, you're wanting to do something and you can't, or why don't they hurry up? What's happened to the bus or the train, etc., etc. There's so many different scenarios, so many different ways in which anger can get triggered and expressed. So what I'm going to do now is put on a PowerPoint, and I'll be speaking to aspects of that. Anytime you have any questions, then please put them in the chat there. So I'm going to just highlight some of these. We're not going to go through every single PowerPoint, but here we go. Let me see if I can find the shared screen.
Okay, John. Just a question. So all the questions would be handled at the end of the session, I'm guessing?
It's probably better, I think, in the circumstances,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay. So until then, if everyone could lower their hands, and you could, if you just want yourself, your questions to be anonymous, you could just put anon and put the question, and you could put it directly to the host, and we would take it from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Good.
Thank you.
Okay, so there we go. So you can see the subtitle for the Goodbye to Anger is Learning to Live in Peace Again. Okay, so that's a fairly straightforward explanation, isn't it? And we're going to do it through looking at 4 different steps. And the first step is really about the erupting volcano, which is all about opening our eyes and understanding what anger is really all about, where it comes from and how it expresses itself. And this really is the foundation of everything else. So we'll spend quite a lot of time on this step or part, and then we'll go quickly through the other 3 steps, because once you understand the foundation, everything else becomes quite simple and logical. So we're going on a journey inwards, because spirituality is all about looking in. It's not about complaining and blaming and pointing the fingers at other people. It's all about looking inside myself, understanding myself, and trying to work out why I get angry and why I express myself in certain ways. So the second step means then that I start looking at my thought processes, what's going on in my mind. The third step then is going into what we call the depths of the volcano, which is looking at the subconscious aspects of anger. And then the final step is going really into the heart of the matter, looking at the spiritual aspects of anger. So a quick way of summarizing all that is that first of all, we need to open our eyes, because if we don't really understand anger and what it's all about, then there'll be no incentive to change. And secondly, we need to change our mind. Thirdly, we need to heal our heart. And actually, this is a key step in the whole process, because within us, there's all sorts of anger and bitterness and rage from the past. And until that's healed, we're always going to have that potential to explode inside. And then finally, awakening our spirit. So you're going to have a good understanding of anger by the time we've finished, and there'll be lots of practical tools to help you. So in terms of opening our eyes, we're going to look at the different forms of anger and the manifestations and its effect on our well-being. So the key step really then is to first of all understand the definition. So I'll speak a little bit to this. It's a fear-based reaction that's negative, not in the sense that we're making a judgment about it, but whenever we get angry, we feel bad afterwards. We don't feel uplifted usually. We might initially think, great, I've told them what I think, but the next day we'll be thinking, oh, I wish I hadn't said that, or I wish I'd dealt with it in a different way. So it's a fear-based, there's a fear there of we're going to get hurt, we're going to get suppressed, we're going to be upset in some way. So we don't want that to happen. So therefore we go into this negative state, and it's an emotional reaction to situations, circumstances, or people which disturbs our peace of mind and has harmful consequences for the self and others. So another key word there which is underlined is the word reaction. So if you react to anything, the outcome is guaranteed to be worse than if you were to respond. So it's a very important point to remember. If we want to be less frustrated and irritated, we need to learn to respond to things rather than react. Because a reaction is an automatic, non-thinking way of dealing with things. It's what animals do. So we've been blessed with that gift of judgment, that ability to control things. So therefore, we're able to stop and think, if only for a second, and come up with a different way of dealing with things. So that's a key point to remember, actually. Always respond rather than react. So all these things, they're going to be disturbing our peace of mind. Our peace of mind is what we were born with. Our peace of mind is the state which we strongly desire at all times. We all are basically peace loving, even though we may not feel it at times. Why do we go on holiday? To relax and get away from it all. In other words, to be peaceful. Why do we go for a drink or have a coffee or whatever, or walk in nature? It's all to reconnect with the peace. So another point to remember then, if we're not feeling peaceful, it's a sign we've gone off track. So any form of irritation, any form of annoyance, it's really a bit of feedback to us saying, hang on a minute, you've gone off course. You've gone away from your true and peaceful nature. So it's a bit like putting your hand in a fire. We're not meant to put our hands in a fire, and if we do, our hand will burn and hurt. Likewise with the anger. If you get angry, it's going to hurt you just as much as it will hurt anyone else. So there's lots of sorrow connected with it. We're going to lose our peace of mind. We're going to feel guilty, maybe ashamed. It'll spoil our relationships. It's going to damage our nervous system in some respects. It's a waste of energy, mentally and physically. We can often lose our judgment and become inconsiderate in terms of the needs of others. And of course, it also affects the collective consciousness. And this is why, people like, any military dictator or warmonger can actually make war, is because they're connecting to all the negative thoughts and feelings and energy and vibrations which we've all generated over time. If we were all completely peace loving, there's no way, for example, that President Putin could have invaded Ukraine, because there wouldn't be any energy behind it. There wouldn't be any desire to hurt or any desire to dominate, because when we're in a state of peace, that's the last thing we want to do. There are some gifts. It can help protect us at times. It gives us insights into ourselves. Why do I get angry with so-and-so when they say something, but I don't when somebody else says exactly the same thing? So it becomes an opportunity to learn and grow and develop new ways of being. And obviously it can be a catalyst for change. And, once we feel so, what would the word be? Disturbed or whatever, we want to change the system because it's not working, it's not helping us, then we can galvanize the energy, transform it into something positive. So it's an opportunity to increase our strength of character. Also highlights the need for better communications and relationships and more self-confidence and self-respect. Now, a key thing again to understand is about the fight or flight reaction. Every time we get angry, we trigger off this biological reaction in our body. So in other words, we'll start getting adrenaline pumping around our system. Cortisol will be injected into the bloodstream. Cortisol thickens the blood. Because we're getting tense and anxious, the muscles will actually contract around the blood vessels and the arteries. So we'll be pushing thickened blood through narrower veins and arteries. And this, of course, is then going to cause us some heart problems, as we'll see in a minute. Also, a lot of acid is generated in the stomach, and cancer cells thrive in acid. So if we keep on stressing ourselves out with this anger response, whether it's a really outrageous burst of anger or whether it's the slower fuse of frustration or irritation, we're actually damaging our bodies, and this sooner or later will lead to all sorts of medical conditions: high blood pressure, coronary disease, migraines and headaches, depression, insomnia, digestive disorders, muscular spasms, skin disorders. So like eczema, apparently the cause of that is extreme antagonism, bursting out through your skin because you're not actually verbalizing or releasing the anger that you're feeling inside. Again, it can, in certain cases, lead to cancer, because if you're suppressing all your feelings and you're feeling resentful and bitter and angry and upset, you're generating all that tension, you're generating all that acid inside you, and then you could more or less say your anger is eating you up. That's not to suggest, of course, that all cancers are caused by anger. I'm not saying that, but there's definitely a correlation between suppressed anger and some cancers. Then we've got all the signs of anger, the temper outbursts, crying, withdrawing, not being able to concentrate, and then making poor decisions, smoking more, drinking more, taking more drugs or tranquilizers, getting up feeling tired, going to bed feeling really drained, etc. All these things have a huge impact on our behavior and on our body. And then we're going to have all these different feelings inside us, the irritability, the worry, the rapid mood swings, the complaining and the criticizing. These are all signs of someone who is unhappy, someone who is disconnected from their peace. And then that's going to lead to all sorts of feelings, because we know inside our hearts we want to be peaceful. We know inside our hearts we should be kind, we should be nice to people, and we're not being. So what happens? We start to feel ashamed, worried, guilty. We feel hopeless and inadequate, worthless, useless, sometimes suicidal, helpless, misunderstood, and then you tend to shut down, withdraw, and then you'll become alienated from others and feel lonely. So really, there's a whole variety of symptoms around, and it's useful to know of them, because then we can tune in and see whether we're feeling really bad inside or other people are. So how do we deal with all of this? And a key technique is called reflective learning. So this is basically an inside-out approach to personal growth and development. It's been around a long time now. But basically the idea is, as I mentioned before, really, it's all to do with what's going on inside me. So rather than looking out, we look in. We recognize we're actually responsible for our own thoughts, words, and actions. So this is very important, taking responsibility. Nobody can make you get angry, not in theory anyway. You decide to get angry with them because you could choose to deal with things in a different way, in another way. You could choose to be assertive. You could choose to walk out the room. You could choose to have a dialogue with them. There's lots of things you could do which would make the situation very different. So for this, to show how it works in practice, there's 5 steps. If we want to change any patterns of behavior, we need to start off by observing what's going on. So what I would like you to do, please, is write down a trigger. So write the word trigger on a piece of paper, and next to that word trigger, put an example of something that makes you frustrated or irritated or angry. Can be anything you like. I'm going to use the example of a traffic jam. So what we're going to do is observe what happens when that trigger occurs. So I observe when I get stuck in a traffic jam, I start shouting and all the rest of it. So underneath that word trigger then, if you could write the word behavior, and next to it, put down 1 or 2 examples of how you behave when the trigger occurs. So in terms of myself then, I might have shouted in the past. I might have made rude gestures. So how did I behave? Or how do you behave when that trigger occurs? Underneath that, then, write the word physical effects. So what happens physically when that trigger happens? So I notice if I get stuck in a traffic jam, I tense up, my shoulders go tense, my jaw clenches, I might grab the steering wheel very tightly. I might have butterflies in my tummy, feeling all anxious and that because I'm going to be late and things like that. So those are the physical effects. Then underneath that, write the word emotion. And next to it, write the main feeling that you have when you get stuck in whenever that trigger occurs. So for me, frustration. I'm really frustrated. I got stuck in this traffic jam and I can't move. And I'm going to be late. So I'm really frustrated. So what's the feeling for you when your trigger occurs? Then underneath that, write the word thought. And next to that thought, write down the first thought. This is very important. The first thought that comes into your head when the trigger occurs. So for me, it would be, I hate traffic jams. So what's your first thought? How dare you? Who do you think you are, maybe, depending on what it is. Okay, so this is the observing. This is observing all the reactions which happen when a trigger occurs. So this is a very good way of learning a lot about yourself. So, you know, when you take that step back, you're looking at the situation objectively. So we're not there to criticize or complain about our behavior or anything. We're just wanting to understand. So we understand by observing. Then we reflect on what we've just observed. So reflect on your example. Is it good to be getting so stressed out just because of getting stuck in a traffic jam? Look what it's doing to my body. Look how it's showing me up in front of all these other people when I make rude gestures or shout or swear. So that's part of the reflection. How can I do things better? So write down something that you could do differently if the trigger should occur again in the future. So for example, in my case, with traffic jams, in future, I could, for example, put on some nice music to calm me down. I could do some slow, deep, gentle breathing to relax my body. I could accept the situation. Acceptance is a very powerful tool for dealing with any form of anger. It is what it is. It's neither good nor bad. It's just a traffic jam. So when we're open-minded, when we realize we've got choices, when we know we can be creative, we can then reflect on these things and come up with our own solutions. You don't need me to tell you what to do, because when you take that step back and start thinking about it, you can see for yourself there are things which you could do differently. And so in this way, we then learn. So it's all about learning. So every frustration, every little irritation is an opportunity to learn and grow. And then when we've learned the lesson, nothing will change until we put the lesson into practice. So this is very important, actually, because the habit of getting angry or frustrated has built up over time. And we're more or less conditioned now to behave in that sort of way. You know, they can look at your neural pathways in your brain, and you know, we've almost biologically conditioned ourselves into automatically behaving in a certain way. So if we want to change those neural patterns, if we want to create new ones, which lead to a different response, then we've got to practice the new way of being, the new habit, if you like, for a minimum of 21 days. Some people would say 90 days, or 21 occasions. So in terms of a traffic jam, I would need to practice being calm for 21 traffic jams. So if you follow this process, you'll then be able to change whatever it is you want to change in your life. So waiting for the train, you know, that doesn't turn up, you know, you've got a choice. Accept, it's okay. Use the time to read or catch up on your emails or whatever it might be. So it's all about choosing to respond to the demands that are made of us and using our mind and intellect and internal resources in a positive way for the benefit of ourselves and others. So there are key words there underlined: the importance of responding rather than reacting. We've already talked about that. Recognizing we've got a choice. We've already talked a little bit about that. And then the new word there is positive. Now this, again, for some people, you know it all already. For some other people, it's unknown. They can't believe there's such a thing as positive thinking, because the whole of our society is geared to negative thinking. Always complaining, always criticizing, always judging, always putting people down. All the isms, the sexism, the racism, the nationalism, one religion thinking it's better than another, they're all forms of negative thinking. And negative thinking really is all about thoughts which damage the self and other people. So any form of negative thinking is going to lead to a stress reaction, is going to lead to feelings of frustration and irritation and anger. Positive thinking is the opposite of that. Positive thinking is all about seeing the good in every situation. It's all about making the most of things. It's all about appreciating things, being grateful for things, seeing the benefit in everything, whatever it may be. So if we can shift our mindset from the negative to the positive, that's going to make a big difference. We'll talk about that a bit more in a moment. So basically, we've got a choice then. We know we can either be positive or negative. We can either be proactive or reactive. We can either look for a solution or concentrate on the problem. We can either empower ourselves or we can stay in victim mode. Victims always feel there's nothing that they can do. They feel hopeless and helpless, and therefore they operate from a basis of fear, and they're much more likely to be pessimistic in their attitude. Those who feel empowered, they're more likely to operate from a basis of love. They're more likely to be optimistic. So this is the choice which we can make. And I summarize the choice in 2 words: glad or sad. And the sad can stand for being stressed, angry or depressed, because this is what's going to happen if I go down that negative route. Or the glad stands for giving, loving, accepting, and being detached. So when we're detached, this again is a very important point. We can look at things objectively without getting emotionally involved in them. On the other hand, we don't want to be just cold, like machines looking at things. So we look at things through the eyes of love and detachment. So I wish the best for everything. I wish the best for everyone, but I'm not going to get emotionally involved in it. Not in a negative way. I'll do my best to help and support, but I refuse to disturb my peace of mind by going into blaming and complaining. And to help me with that, I accept everything the way it is. I accept somebody's angry with me. It's their own stuff. They're being triggered by something and they're projecting it onto me. I do not have to accept it. I do not have to engage with it. I can try and help them to resolve it if I choose to. So I have a more giving approach to things. So again, if you can remember this, choose, what do you want to choose? The glad way or the sad way? So basically, we've got this choice then. We can deal with anger in a painful, mindless, senseless, regressive way. So in other words, we can explode with anger, we can implode, or we can suppress our anger, push it down so deeply that we're not aware of it, but actually it will still be operating as a deep level and will have a profound impact on our mental and our physical health. Alternatively, we can go down the peaceful way, the mindful way, the sensible way, the adult way. And to help us to do that, we can be assertive and use nonviolent communication, or we can go into a contemplation and enlightenment. So we go rise above and go beyond it all and see it in a different sort of way. So really, this is the foundation of everything else, because just from this alone, you can see how damaging anger can be. And you can also see there are ways out of it. The reflective learning, the choice between the positive and the negative, etc. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and maybe if anyone's got any questions on what, maybe you could, if you've got a question now on that part, we'll do that quickly, because it'll also give you a chance then to have a rest. So I need to plug my computer back in. Have a rest from the PowerPoint for a minute. Quite a lot to take in. Does it make sense so far? Is everybody happy with what I've been doing? You can put a little, it's got a thumbs up or a little hand. Anyone want to put up a little hand to say it's okay? So anybody there? Nobody's putting any. Oh, somebody. So Claire's putting a hand up. That's nice, good. And everyone else is not putting hands up or that. So maybe. Oh, and someone else. Good. Just put a thumbs up too. Oh, there's more thumbs coming out now. Good. It's nice to know you're there still. Okay, so before we do the rest, just stand up for a minute and have a little movement around, because we're only here till 3:30, but an hour and a half just sitting and listening is a lot, isn't it? So just bend your knees a little bit. There isn't time to go for a coffee or anything like that, but we're just going to move around a little bit. That's it. Just get the energy flowing and going. Right, there we go. And now I'm going to give you a questionnaire to look at. And this for me was life-changing, because I used to think I wasn't really angry. And then I did this questionnaire and my jaw dropped. So the same might happen to you. Let's see. So I need to put my glasses on. And you can get a copy of this afterwards, but I'm going to read through the questions, as you'll see in a second. Oh my goodness me, whereabouts is it now? I've got so many things here. This is the one, I think. Yes, here we go. Right, now I'm going to try and make this a bit bigger. If I can move that out of the way. Can you see that?
Yes, John, we can see that.
All right then. So basically what I want you to do, I'll read everyone else them out very quickly. And if you've done it in the past, but you're not doing it now, you put a cross. So for example, if you stockpile resentments, you used to do that, but you're not doing it now, then you put a cross by that, which put a little cross. You'll have a list on your paper, a list of crosses for things you've used to doing you don't do now. If you're still doing it, then you have another column with ticks. And basically, after we've done this side, you add up the number of crosses you've got, the number of ticks you've got, and that will show how you've improved over the years, maybe, or not. And then we'll do the next sheet, which is, and do the same again. So this side here, I didn't create this, I got this from a book called Managing Anger by Gail Lindenfield. And she's listed all sorts of types of anger and subdivided them into passive anger, which is this side, where it's repressed or denied, but the signals are still coming out through our behavior. And then on the other side, we've got the, make this a little bit bigger, make it
Yes, please. Thank you.
That's
perfect.
Yes. And then on the other side, we're going to have the aggressive behavior where it's more externalized. So we'll go through this quickly then. Secretive. So, put a cross or a tick if this applies to you. Stockpiling resentments, which are often expressed behind people's backs or through sly digs inserted into seemingly innocent conversations. Next one, giving people the silent treatment or under breath mutterings. Did you used to do it, or do you do it still? Cross or tick. Avoidance of eye contact. Going around with a long face without explanation. Put downs described as caring remarks or feedback like it's for your own good or as a joke. And then gossip. So those are the secretive signs. Manipulative, using tears as a substitute for showing anger. Sabotaging plans and relationships by being late, forgetting or playing stupid. Withholding money or resources, using emotional blackmail, provoking people into aggression, then offering patronizing forgiveness. So these are all forms of manipulation. Moving on then to self-blame, either a cross or a tick or nothing. Often saying sorry inappropriately or too often. Being overly self-critical. All right, I can identify with those two still. Self-sacrificing, being overly helpful, pointedly making do with second best.
Sorry, John, could you go a little slowly? People might be noting them down a little slowly.
All right, okay then, sorry, yes. Pointedly making do with second best, quietly making long-suffering sighs, but refusing help. Don't worry about me. Then the evasive, turning your back in a crisis, avoiding conflict and frustration, not communicating, becoming phobic, displacing blame for distress onto neutral objects or places. And then being obsessional, having overly high expectations of yourself or others, overeating or over dieting. So these are all on the passive side. So maybe then just add up the number of crosses you've got for things that you used to do but you don't do now. And then add up the number of ticks, things which you still do at least sometimes. So you'll have maybe 4 things you used to do and 2 things you still do. So that's your score on the passive side. And now if you'd like to write aggressive behavior underneath that, and then as on the other side, either put a tick or a cross or nothing against each of these. You're going to have a series again of ticks or crosses. So frightening people by saying how you could harm them or their property. This is threatening. Finger pointing. Leaning forward, hands on hips, fist shaking. Slamming doors, showing irritation by tapping your fingers without expressing the cause of the anger. Hurtful behavior, using physical violence, giving verbal abuse with humiliating remarks, especially in public, using caustic or cutting wit or unfair practical jokes, using foul language to offend, ignoring other people's feelings, especially when they are obviously manifest, labeling others, you're an idiot or you're a male chauvinist. Then destructive behavior, harming objects, knowingly destroying a relationship between 2 people, driving recklessly, drinking too much. So it's either tick or cross or nothing. Bullying, using threats or violence to get weaker people to conform to your will or to do things they don't want to do. Persecuting, pushing or shoving, using money or other means of power to oppress, shouting down other people. Then we've got unjust blaming, so accusing others of your own mistakes, blaming others for your own feelings and behavior. You're getting me angry, you drove me to it. Then selfish, ignoring other people's needs, stonewalling genuine attempts to sort out frustrations, like there's nothing I want to talk about. Then the revengeful, being over punitive, refusing to forgive and forget, bringing up hurtful memories from the past, doing something just out of spite. And then there's the unpredictable, blowing hot and cold, having explosive rages over minor frustrations, attacking people's behavior indiscriminately, dispensing punishment out of the blue, and using drink and drugs that are known to destabilize one's mood. So these are all different signs of aggressive behavior. So by now then, you'll have a number of crosses under aggressive behavior for things that you used to do, but you don't do now. And you'll have a list of ticks for things that you still do. So again, if you can add up your score there, you maybe have 5 on the aggressive side that you used to do, and maybe 3 on the tick side that you still do. So that's giving you a snapshot of your behavior. So what I want you to do is look at it objectively with that reflective learning process. So without judging, and observe whether you're more passive in your anger or you're more aggressive. If you're 50-50 on both, as it were, then ask yourself, am I more aggressive at home or at work? Or am I more passive at home or work? Because you're trying to understand how your anger expresses itself, how it expresses itself and where. So just think about that for a minute. And also ask yourself, why am I more passive or why am I more aggressive? And that usually goes back to childhood patterns which you've copied from your parents, but just, it may not be that in your case, but just reflect on all of that. And then write down your conclusions. So I am more aggressive because of ... I am more passive because ... So when I did this myself, the first time, I thought I was more aggressive because I could remember certain occasions when I had shouted or thrown something or kicked something. And then having completed that, I realized I had far more ticks on the passive side. So my anger was much more passive. And then I started thinking, well, why? And I came up with at least two reasons. One was, in our family, we never spoke about our feelings. Everything was repressed. And on the one time when I did shout at my mother, I'll never forget it. She was clean on her hands and knees. She was an Irish lady. She was on her hands and knees in the kitchen, scrubbing the kitchen floor. And then when I started shouting at her, she didn't shout back. She just silently cried, and her tears mixed with the soap suds on the floor. And I felt so bad about having made my mother cry. I mean, I look at it with different eyes now. I didn't make her cry as such. It just triggered off things in her from her past. And that's how she'd learned to cope, by keeping her mouth shut and just crying. So I thought, I can't say how I feel in future, because it's going to lead to that sort of reaction. And then the other thing was being brought up a Catholic, getting angry is a sin. So that was an influence. And again, children should be seen and not heard. There are various things which go on in childhood which lead you to be much more suppressed or passive when it comes to expressing anger. But in your case, you may have totally different reasons. So it's good to understand these reasons, because if you can understand your own anger and where yours is coming from, you'll also be able to understand other people's. And then when there's understanding, then compassion comes in, because you realize it's a much bigger thing than somebody just shouting at you in the here and now. There's a whole history behind it, a whole series of conditioning that's gone on over many years. So again, you might think women are going to be more passive and men are going to be more aggressive, but actually that's not necessarily the case. Women can be more aggressive than men. I can remember I've done this course in the past in Ireland, a long time ago now, and I think I did a tour around Ireland, and altogether probably about 100 people took the course. And when I said, hands up those who are more passive in their anger, I think 99 out of 100 people were more passive. There was only one person, I think she was a woman, who put her hand up and said she was more aggressive. That shows you the influence, I would say, of culture and of religion. Maybe it's changed since then, and this is probably about 10 years ago, I think, when I went around Ireland doing this. But anyway, it's food for thought there, food for understanding. So we'll move on. So really, we've done that step one there, opening the eyes. And if you haven't done this before, or if you haven't thought about anger before, then hopefully it has opened your eyes at least a little bit. So going back to this, back to the PowerPoint. We need to move on. So step 2 about changing our mind, really it's about looking inside at the different types of thoughts, and that's, yes, because, oh, actually, yes, I should have said, remind me now, when you go back to those reactions, you know, to the anger, if you look at the example you gave, there's how you behave, there's the effect on your body, there's the emotions you're feeling, and there's the thoughts. Those are the 4 types of reactions. And of those 4 reactions, one is more important than the others. And you could make a valid case for any of them being the most important. But in practice, when you start to analyze it, it all boils down to the way you think about the situation. So it's your thoughts, which, and I can guarantee in your case, it'll be a negative thought about your example that's triggered your anger. So you'll have the negative thinking leading to negative feelings because of that mind-body connection. The combination of negative thoughts and feelings then expresses itself in the body. So you get the tension and all the other things. And then you get the behavior. So the behavior is the outcome or the tip of the iceberg of all the other things going on underneath. So that's, again, very important insight. So when somebody is shouting at you or criticizing you, it's good to remember underneath there, the body is all very tense and the heart is beating faster. And then underneath that, they're feeling very angry, very upset. And underneath that, they're having certain thoughts. So again, if you want to, you can try and deal with it rather than condemning their behavior on that external level. You could say, what are you feeling at the moment? And they'll say, I'm feeling really angry because ... Or what are you thinking? And then that will lead to a dialogue and you'll feel much better because you've then started to sort it all out. So there we go. So moving on a little bit then. Our thoughts really, they're very powerful. You know, they can either raise the atmosphere and the vibrations, or they can bring us down. So angry thoughts and feelings will bring us down. Peaceful, loving thoughts will raise us up. So, but, you know, where do all thoughts come from? They're all influenced by our beliefs and our values and our attitude. And this will affect our perception, our feelings, our words, and our actions. So we all know a bit about thoughts. They can be powerful or weak, concentrated or diffused. And it's important to remember the quality of my thoughts determines the quality of my life. So, you know, there are all these types of thoughts. We won't go into them all. The 2 key ones are the positive ones and the negative ones. So we have to remember, I create my thoughts, I'm responsible for my thoughts, I choose my thoughts, and nobody can make me angry. If you blame anyone, then you've given away your power. You're leaving it up to them. They're the only ones who can sort it out. You've gone into victim mode, and then that's not going to help you or anyone else. So the positive thoughts, we know that they are uplifting and inspiring. They're going to make us feel better. So a little guide there, they need to be focused on the here and now. So I am peaceful, not I am going to be peaceful. They need to be unqualified. So I am peaceful rather than I am peaceful sometimes. Because that sometimes qualifies it and dilutes the benefit of it. And of course, it's beneficial to the self and others, and without any negatives. So never use a not. If you say, I will not get angry, your subconscious doesn't recognize the word not. So you're actually saying, I will get angry. That's how it's read in your subconscious. So rather than putting it in a negative way, you would say, I keep calm, rather than I won't get angry. So how do we change our thoughts? We need to check them and change them. So I stand back, I look at my thoughts. Do I really want to carry on having this negative thought? Because it's going to have a big impact on me and the people around me. So if I want to, I can then choose to change it into something more positive, something more helpful. Then we've got affirmation. So that's replacing old negative belief or thoughts with something positive. So if you want to stay peaceful, Om Shanti is a very good affirmation. Om Shanti, I am a peaceful soul. Keep on saying that when you're in a challenging situation. Om Shanti, Om Shanti. And it can help you quite a lot. Imagination or visualization. Now, see, we always are visualizing without necessarily realizing it. It means we're creating a picture in our mind as to how things are going to be. And then having created that image, we then react to it. So for example, if you visualize yourself going to a meeting and it's going to be a really difficult meeting with lots of angry people there, you're already psyching yourself up to expect something bad to happen. You're going to go into that meeting in a defensive state, already primed to fight or fly. And then the outcome is going to be much more likely to be negative because you've gone into it with that sort of visualization. So if you can instead visualize the meeting is going to be very peaceful, very successful, we're going to talk things through and come to a good compromise, then that will make a very big difference. And then the outcome is much more likely to be good. And then, of course, we've got meditation, which we'll talk about a bit more later on. So a bit more then on changing your thinking. You can put a full stop and just refuse to think about the trigger anymore. Change expectations into hopes, because if you expect anybody to do anything, you're trying to control them or control the situation. And you cannot control anything or anyone except yourself. So this is a big cause of lots of anger, expectations. You expect your electricity bill to be low and suddenly it's doubled in price. Your expectation, your way of trying to control your electricity bill has been blown out the water. Mine went up from originally from £60 a month to £225 a month. That's what the electricity company was going to charge me. And I could have got quite angry about that, but I chose to stay calm and peaceful. I did a bit of research on my consumption over the previous year and realized they doubled my consumption, which was not right. So I phoned them up and they accepted my figures, and then they reduced their estimate for the year by half. And my electricity went up from £60 to £120 a month. Still a lot, but a lot less than they were originally wanting me to pay. If I'd got really angry with them and shouted down the phone to the guy and all the rest of it and slammed the phone down on him, I still would be paying that £225. So it really, it's important to always take control, stay peaceful, and hope things will get better. Hope the train will be on time. Hope that people will clean their bedrooms. Hope that someone will say thank you when you give them a present. Don't expect it. And then on the gratitude side there, if you're grateful for being alive and, or, you know, and for being able to walk and talk and all those sorts of things, you're going to be in a much better mood than if you're the sort of person who's always grumbling and complaining about everything or is ungrateful. So gratitude is important, appreciating everything is important, using positive proactive language is important, and also checking some of your beliefs, because if your belief system, which you've picked up as a child, is very negative, then you're going to be prone to anger straight away. So I can remember my mother, one of the things she said to me was, people are only nice to you if they want something from you. And you know, just imagine what that does to your relationships. If someone is nice, straight away you're on the defensive. You know, what do they want? They're abusing me, they're trying to get something out of me. So we really need to go into some depth on all of these things in order to, you know, make things better. Then there's looking after yourself. So avoiding violent films and bad company, because that's just going to fuel the negative. Avoiding alcohol and drugs, which are going to alter your mindset, make you more vulnerable to being volatile. Again, watch what you eat and drink. So again, avoiding food cooked by someone who's full of anger, because the vibrations from their anger will go into the food. Ideally, not eating any meat, because that's going to be full of tension and fear from the animal that has been killed. Then the importance of, you know, releasing endorphins through exercising, breathing from the diaphragm rather than just up the top of the lungs, getting enough sleep, relaxing, and then if you can, sorting out any practical problems that could be causing you some stress. And then there's assertiveness. Now you can have a whole, you know, afternoon on assertiveness, but basically it's recognizing that you have a right to your own views, your own feelings, your own opinions. You have a right to express your needs, and without abusing other people. And it's an alternative to aggressive, passive, and manipulative behavior. And to do that, you need to be honest and positive in your attitudes and intentions. Keep calm, know what you want and ask for it clearly. That's very important. Quite often we'll say to them, don't you shout at me, but we don't necessarily tell them what we would like instead. So for example, I'd like you to listen to me. I would like you to speak to me in a calm manner so that we can discuss things better. And then very important to use I statements rather than you statements, or one, say, I feel upset when you shout at me. So you're giving people feedback on the effects of their anger on you. Then we need to listen with an open heart, be firm but fair, so put down some boundaries and try to come up with a win-win situation rather than criticizing and blaming. So there we go. And in a way, underneath all of that, this is very important, when we get angry, there's a basic need, primary need that has not been met. So we need to check inside myself, what need is not being met? Maybe I'm feeling unvalued, unsafe, insignificant, uncared for, unseen, unheard, rejected, not appreciated, not acknowledged. What's going on inside? Do I feel disrespected? Do I feel discouraged? Do I feel useless? Am I being abused in some way? Do I feel there's a lack of trust or love there? So there's a need which we're wanting fulfilled, and sometimes we need to be fulfilling those for ourselves rather than expecting other people to do it for us. So again, expectations come into all of this. Okay, so those are the first two steps. There's 10 minutes left. So I'm going to talk to the next two steps really. And again, need to leave a couple of minutes for questions maybe. So the third step is about healing the heart. And basically, we're like walking wounded people. We've all got things from the past inside us which are having an impact on us, either consciously or unconsciously. So here we've got a little map of the mind here. So inside here, there are all the hurts from the past in our subconscious. So I often use the example of me being called a beanpole when I was young. I was always taller than anyone else, very thin. Beanpole is like bamboo, tall bamboo cane, which is used for supporting runner beans. So I had many beanpole experiences where people used to laugh at me, trip me up, and I'd end up falling on the ground, grazing my hands and arms and, knees and things like that when I was a kid in the playground. And someone could come along now and call me a beanpole, and my memories would come up from the past into the present, and with full force, all the feelings from the past would come up, and I could actually hit somebody in the here and now for calling me a beanpole. And they might think, why is he doing that? I was just being funny. They wouldn't know about all my beanpole experiences. And then having upset somebody or been upset by them and gone through all of that anger and that, and expressing it in my words and actions, I'd have created another beanpole experience, which will reinforce everything and make it even worse. So the trick is to get rid of all the feelings connected with the things which have happened to us in the past. So that when somebody calls me a beanpole, there's no anger left, there's no frustration left, because I've released it all. And I'll show you how to let go of that in a minute. So things may come up from the past now. So immediately, rather than going into all of that, I remember I want to stay peaceful. So I use my intellect. What we've been doing this afternoon is putting new knowledge or information into our intellect to improve our decision making. So when things come up, rather than reacting and automatically behaving in a certain way, we stop and think, we decide what's the best way to deal with it, and we put a full stop maybe, change the behavior, change the outcome, and then change the memories which are going into the subconscious. So eventually we become more peaceful and less angry. So there's two things going on there. There's changing the external behavior, and there's releasing the feelings inside. So to let go of all those feelings actually is quite a big job. It takes a lot of courage and patience and a desire really to live a happier life. So how do we let go? Most important thing is to acknowledge and accept how you feel about the past. Very important, because if you deny it, if you don't go there, if you don't look at it, because it's too painful, it's always going to haunt you. So this is the biggest thing. So we will do a little exercise on that in a minute. We can then also look at the past with understanding, knowing that we're all meant to be peaceful. How come my mum or my dad was always angry with me? Right. What was their childhood like? What did they go through? And then we start seeing that bigger multi-dimensional picture. You can see they were a product of their home. They were a product of their culture. And then you are able to take things less personally. They would have been like that with anybody because of the way they were brought up. So with that understanding, there comes, compassion. So again, we can release our feelings in a positive way, so we can talk about it with somebody. You really upset me the way when you said X, Y, or Z. That can help. Seeing the bigger picture we've talked about already. Appreciating the lessons learned and the benefits gained. So actually, I'm quite glad I got called a beanpole, because now I know what it feels like to be bullied and humiliated, and I make sure I don't do that to other people. If I hadn't gone through that experience, then I might be laughing and joking and making people feel small, because I won't have the understanding of what it feels like to be on the receiving end. And then again, it's an opportunity really to develop compassion, mercy, forgiveness, being loving and detached for yourself first and then others. So, if I can accept my own angry behavior, and if I can forgive myself and understand all the things that affected me, then I'm going to be able to do that with others. Another key thing is to remember, angry people are always unhappy people. That helps a lot. Anyone who's angry, deep inside they're unhappy for all sorts of different reasons. It might be they're unhappy because they haven't got any money. It might be unhappy because their housing situation isn't very good. It might be unhappy because they're having a terrible time at home. They might be unhappy because they're haunted by things from the past. Okay, so we'll do a little letting go exercise now, excuse me, to help release all those feelings from the past, which can get activated and can lead to us being out of control and getting aggressive in our behavior, or passive, being angry and rejecting people in other ways. So just like sit back again, legs uncrossed, and then do the slow, deep, gentle breathing. So breathing in through the nose, filling the lungs from the bottom to the top. Holding the breath for the count of 3. Slowly releasing through the mouth. So we're now in the moment. We're detaching from the body because we're observing everything that's going on. Now we're going to shift our focus inside and have the intention of letting go of all the feelings from the past which I'm holding inside me. Now, we're doing this to release them, not to reinforce them. So we're going to be detached about it. We have the intention of releasing them so that we can feel more peaceful and happy. So you can, on the screen of your mind, imagine that there's a big container in front of you. And then give all these feelings a shape or a color and a color, and imagine them coming up before you and going into this big container. And the container will expand to take all the feelings you want to put into it. So let go of any rage, any frustration, any irritation, any hate, any desire for revenge. Pour it all into the container. Let it all go. And the more you let go, the happier you will feel inside. The calmer you will feel. The more peaceful you will feel. And then when the container is full, you've got rid of everything you want to get rid of, just notice a little red button on the right-hand side of the container. And when you press it, then the bottom of the container will fly open and all these feelings will disappear, never to return. So press the button with love and let all the feelings, negative feelings, just fly away, never to return. And as you release the button, the container closes. And on the other side, on the left-hand side, there's a green button, a green dial. And just a dial for peace and a dial for happiness. So just turn the dial up so the peace inside grows and the happiness grows. And now just notice how much lighter you feel, how much brighter you feel. Imagine yourself being like a big bird, a big, powerful bird, like an eagle, and just see yourself flying through the sky, free of all the bondages from the past, free of all the weight and the baggage of all those angry, negative feelings from the past. See yourself swooping and gliding, feeling free and happy. And then as you land on the ground, let the scene before you dissolve and open your eyes. Look around you and smile. Give yourself a pat on the back for letting go of lots of different things. Okay, so I hope you found that helpful. We'll move on to the last part, which is awakening the spirit. And most of you will know all about this. But once we open our third eye, as it were, once we become aware that we're living in a world in which we're spiritual beings, having a human experience, then it opens us up to things like the law of karma. It opens us up to seeing everything as a drama. It makes us more detached. It opens us up to the possibility of connecting with the divine, receiving power and energy, which will help us to deal with all sorts of different things. So I'm not going to go into any detail on that because I'm presuming most of you have done the meditation course. Most of you are already meditators. You know all about this side of things. And yeah, so hopefully your spirit's already awakened and actually will now perhaps more knowledge to help it to deal with living in this, material, practical world where all sorts of things are going on. Okay, so I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions, and then there'll be a short meditation. Any questions or any comments? We've gone through things quite quickly.
Yes.
But the essence is there.
Yeah, that was a great list, John, that you gave us, but I wasn't able to do it all so quickly. I'd like to get a copy of it and then go through it slowly.
Yes,
Because
sure.
my feeling is if it's repressed feelings, then they're much more subtle, so they take more time.
Yes, yeah, you have to be aware of it. So this is where meditation can come in very handy,
Yeah.
actually,
Mm,
because when we're feeling disturbed, if we go inside, like the observer,
yeah.
then it will come up. And actually, it's amazing, especially during COVID and things like that. Lots of things have come up from the past, memories I never even thought of, and I haven't thought of for years. And actually, I still had some deep rage inside, and I ended up going and doing a bit of therapy on that. And under hypnosis, discovered the original causes, which were things when I was a baby that happened. Yeah, you know, we're all at different stages with this, and I think it's like an onion. We're removing layers. It's not all going to happen but by letting go once, because it'll just take you down a little bit further, and then there'll be more and more and more, and that's good. You know, there's nothing wrong with that.